The transport shuttle touched down on Kepler 7 with a gentle hiss. Hyun-woo stepped out carrying 2 large bags filled with cooking equipment. His heart raced with excitement. This was it, his own restaurant, on a space station, surrounded by aliens. The station stretched in every direction, a massive ring of metal and glass spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds lived here, worked here, traded here, and now Hyun-woo would cook here. He made his way through the crowded corridors. Aliens of every shape and size passed by. Some walked on 2 legs, some on 4. Some floated, some slithered. Hyun-woo smiled at them all. Back on Earth, he had dreamed of this moment since he was a boy watching cooking shows and space documentaries. The restaurant space was small but perfect. Windows looked out into the stars. The kitchen equipment was basic but functional. Hyun-woo set down his bags and looked around. He could already imagine the smells, the sounds, the happy customers eating his food. For the next 3 days, he cleaned and prepared. He painted the walls a warm orange color. He set up tables and chairs. He organized his kitchen with the precision of a surgeon. Every knife had its place. Every pot and pan hung exactly where he could reach it. His grandmother had taught him that a clean kitchen was a happy kitchen. On opening day, Hyun-woo stood at his door wearing a crisp white chef's coat. He had named his restaurant the Ember Table and hung a sign above the entrance. The name felt right. Fire was the heart of cooking, and he wanted every meal to carry that warmth. The first customers were a group of insect-like beings called Chitauri. They clicked and buzzed at each other, studying the menu with their multiple eyes. Hyun-woo had prepared simple dishes to start. Rice bowls with grilled vegetables, noodle soup with mild spices. Nothing too challenging. The Chitauri ate slowly, politely. When they finished, they paid and left without much reaction. Hyun-woo felt disappointed but not discouraged. It was only the first day. More customers came throughout the week. A family of blue-skinned Quellans found his food too bland. A merchant from the Hive Collective complained the textures were wrong for their digestive system. A lonely methane breather could not even enter the restaurant due to atmosphere incompatibility. Hyun-woo adjusted and experimented. He made dishes spicier for some species, milder for others. He changed textures and temperatures. Slowly, he began to understand the challenge. Every species tasted food differently. What was delicious to one might be poison to another. But he refused to give up. This was his dream. On the 10th day, everything changed. Hyun-woo was preparing dinner service when he felt eyes watching him. He looked up from his cutting board and saw them through the window. 2 young creatures pressed their faces against the glass. They were Vakros. Even a human who had just arrived could recognize them. Reptilian predators, covered in dark scales that shimmered like oil. Their eyes glowed yellow in the dim station light. Claws tapped against the window frame. Each one stood almost 6 feet tall, and they were just children. Hyun-woo had heard about the Vakros. Warrior race. Dangerous. Aggressive. Most species gave them space on the station. But these 2 did not look dangerous. They looked curious. He smiled and waved his knife in greeting. The 2 younglings jerked back in surprise, then slowly raised their clawed hands in return. Hyun-woo returned to his work. He was preparing bulgogi, thin slices of beef marinated in soy sauce, sesame oil, and spices. His knife moved in rapid, precise motions. Chop, chop, chop. The blade flashed under the kitchen lights. He had been cutting vegetables since he was 5 years old. The rhythm was like breathing. He glanced up again. The younglings were still watching, their eyes tracking every movement. When he tossed vegetables in a hot pan, flames leaped up. The younglings pressed closer to the window. When he flipped the pan with a sharp wrist motion, their heads moved in unison, following the arc. Hyun-woo found it amusing. He had never thought of cooking as a spectator sport, but he added a little extra flair to his movements. He spun the knife between cuts, He tossed ingredients high before catching them in bowls. The younglings seemed mesmerized. An hour later, a massive shadow fell across the restaurant entrance. Hyunwoo looked up to see an adult Vakros ducking through his doorway. This one was enormous, at least 8 feet tall, with scars crossing his scales and eyes that held the weight of 1,000 battles. "Human," the Vakros said, his voice like gravel grinding together. "I am Tharvex, Security Chief of Kepler-7. Hyunwoo wiped his hands on his apron and bowed slightly. "Welcome. Would you like a table?" Tharvex did not sit. "I saw Vakros younglings at your window. Why were they here?" "They were just watching me cook," Hyunwoo said honestly. "I did not mind." The big Vakros leaned forward, his hot breath washing over Hyunwoo. "Stay away from our young. Vakros do not permit outside influence on juveniles. It is forbidden. It is insult. You understand?" Hyunwoo felt his stomach tighten, but kept his voice calm. "I understand. I did not invite them. But I will not chase them away if they want to watch through the window." Tharvex's eyes narrowed. For a long moment, the security chief stared at the small human chef. Then he straightened. "You humans are soft. But you have courage. Strange courage." He turned and had to duck again to exit through the door. Hyunwoo released a breath he had not realized he was holding. The next day, the younglings returned. And the day after that. And the day after that. They always stayed outside, watching through the window. Hyunwoo learned to recognize them. The slightly larger one had a distinctive white mark on her snout. The smaller one had brighter yellow eyes. He started to time his most interesting cooking for when they arrived. If he was going to have an audience, he might as well make it entertaining. He practiced his knife skills, his pan flipping, his flame control. The younglings watched everything with an intensity that reminded Hyunwoo of students studying a master. One evening, Hyunwoo was demonstrating his technique for making hand-pulled noodles to a curious customer. He stretched and folded the dough again and again, creating impossibly thin strands. The younglings pressed so close to the window, their breath fogged the glass. When he finished, he looked up and saw something that made him pause. The smaller youngling was mimicking his hand movements in the air, practicing the motion of stretching and folding. The larger one was moving her clawed hands like they held an invisible knife, copying his chopping rhythm. They were learning, not just watching, learning. Hyunwoo felt something warm in his chest. He remembered being young, watching his grandmother cook, trying to copy every move she made. The desire to learn, to master, to create. It was universal. It crossed species. It crossed stars. He caught the younglings' eyes and gave them a slow, respectful nod. They froze, unsure how to respond. Then, almost in unison, they lowered their heads in return. From that moment, Hyunwoo knew they would be back, and he would keep cooking, keep teaching without words. Keep showing them that there were many ways to be strong in this universe, even if it meant making an enemy of the most dangerous warrior race in the galaxy. That night, as Hyunwoo closed his restaurant and cleaned his kitchen, he looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, his home, his family, his grandmother's small kitchen where it all began. He smiled. She would have loved this story. Kira crouched in the ventilation shaft, her sister Vosh right behind her. They had been sneaking through the station's maintenance tunnels for 3 days now, collecting items. A cutting blade from the medical wing, a heating element from an abandoned repair shop, containers from the recycling center. "We have enough now," Vosh whispered, her yellow eyes bright with excitement. "Not yet," Kira said. "We still need the metal bowl, the one the human uses to mix ingredients." They had been watching the human chef for 2 weeks. Every evening after combat training, they would slip away from their dormitory and go to the window of the ember table. The other younglings thought they were crazy. Why waste time watching a human play with food? But Kira and Vosh saw something different. They saw discipline. They saw control. They saw a kind of combat they had never witnessed before. The way the human moved his knife was faster than any Vakros blade master. The way he controlled fire without fear reminded them of the ancient burning tests warriors took. The way he transformed raw ingredients into something new seemed almost like magic. "It is a ritual," Kira had told her sister after the first night. "A battle ritual we do not know." Vosh had agreed. "We must learn it. We must master it like he has." Their people believed in strength through trial. If another species had developed a training method, a combat technique, then it was honorable to study it and adapt it. That was the Vakros way. Learn from all enemies, grow stronger from every encounter. The problem was that no adult would understand. To the elders, cooking was not combat. It was simply preparation of food, a task handled by automated systems in the Vakros ships. No warrior wasted time with such things. But Kira and Vosh knew better. They had seen the human's focus, his precision, his mastery. This was warrior work, even if no one else recognized it. They found their metal bowl in a storage area near the human section. It was perfect, round and deep, just like the one they had seen through the window. "Now we have everything," Kira said, clutching the bowl to her chest. "Tomorrow we begin our training." The abandoned storage bay was perfect for their needs. It was in the old section of Kepler 7, a part of the station that had been decommissioned years ago. No one came here. No one would find them. They set up their equipment on a broken cargo platform. The cutting blade, the heating element, the containers and bowls. Vosh had even stolen a data pad and secretly recorded the human through the window, capturing his movements and techniques. "We start with the knife," Kira said, holding the blade awkwardly. It felt strange in her claws, so different from a combat blade. "Watch how he holds it." They played the recording in slow motion. The human's fingers curved around the handle. His other hand guided the food. The blade moved up and down in a steady rhythm. Kira tried to copy the motion. Her first attempt was clumsy. The blade slipped and clattered on the metal surface. Vosh laughed, then tried herself. She was no better. For hours they practiced. Their claws were not designed for this tool, but Vakros warriors were taught that the body could adapt to any weapon. They adjusted their grip, changed their stance, tried again and again. By the end of the first night, they could hold the knife properly. By the end of the first week, they could make cuts without dropping the blade. It was progress. "We need ingredients," Vosh said one evening. "We cannot practice with air." The station's communal food dispensers were easy targets. Kira and Vosh simply requested standard vegetables and fruits available to all species. No one questioned two Vakros younglings taking food. No one imagined what they were taking it for. They carried their prizes back to the storage bay. Strange earth vegetables called carrots and onions, a leafy thing called cabbage, round red fruits called tomatoes. "Now we fight them," Kira said, setting a carrot on their makeshift cutting board. The recordings showed the human chopping vegetables into perfect, uniform pieces. It looked simple. It was not. Kira's first attempt crushed the carrot into mush. Vosh's first attempt sent the onion rolling across the floor. They growled in frustration, then retrieved their opponents and tried again. The vegetables fought back in ways they had not expected. Onions released vapors that stung their eyes. Tomatoes were too soft, squishing under too much pressure. Carrots were too hard, resisting the blade. "This is why it is training," Vosh said, wiping her eyes. "This is why the human has mastered it. These enemies test different skills. They practiced every night after their regular combat training. Their instructor, Shindra, had noticed they were becoming more focused during drills. Their claw strikes were more precise. Their movements were more controlled. "You two have improved greatly," Shindra said one afternoon. What has changed in your training routine? We have been practicing precision strikes, Kira said, which was technically true. Shindra had nodded, satisfied with the answer. On the 15th night, disaster struck. Vosh was attempting to use the heating element to cook vegetables like she had seen the human do. She had adjusted the temperature too high. The oil in the pan suddenly burst into flames. Both younglings jumped back, their training taking over. Fire was dangerous. Fire could spread. Fire could destroy. But then Kira remembered the recording. The human had dealt with pan fires before. "Water will make it worse," Kira said quickly, her mind racing through the recorded images. "The human used the cover. He cut off the air." She grabbed a flat piece of metal and slammed it over the burning pan. The flames immediately died, starved of oxygen. The younglings stood breathing heavily, staring at the smoking pan. Then slowly they looked at each other and grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. "We are learning," Vosh said. "We are mastering," Kira agreed. The next evening they approached the ember table as usual. They took their positions at the window, ready for another lesson. The human was inside, preparing for the dinner service. He looked up and saw them. He smiled and waved, just like he always did. Then he returned to his work. But something was different this night. After the last customer left and the human began cleaning his kitchen, he looked toward the window again. He stared at them for a long moment. Then he walked to his equipment wall and selected something. A knife. Not one of his regular knives, but a beautiful blade with a wooden handle and gleaming steel. He walked to the window and held it up for them to see. Then carefully, he carried it to the restaurant's front door and placed it on the ground outside. Next to it, he set a small card with writing on it. Kira and Vosh watched, confused. The human looked at them one more time, smiled, and went back inside to finish closing the restaurant. When the lights finally went out and the human left through the back exit, the younglings crept to the front door. They picked up the knife with reverent claws. It was perfectly balanced, sharp, professional. A real chef's knife. Vosh picked up the card. She could not read human writing well, but she recognized some words from the station's common database: recipe, technique, practice. "He knows," Kira whispered. "He knows," Vosh agreed. They looked at each other, then at the gifts in their hands. In Vakros culture, when a master acknowledged a student, it created a bond, an obligation. The student must honor the master by achieving mastery themselves. "We must become perfect," Kira said. "We cannot disappoint him." "We will not," Vosh promised. They carried the knife and recipe card back to their secret training room. That night, they practiced with renewed dedication. The human had given them a real weapon, a real technique scroll. They would prove themselves worthy of this gift. In the morning, Tharvex walked past the ember table on his security rounds. He noticed the human chef setting up for the day. Through the window, he could see the knives hanging on the wall. One space was empty. A knife was missing. Tharvex's eyes narrowed. But he said nothing. Not yet. He would watch. He would wait. If the human was breaking the rules about contact with Vakros younglings, there would be consequences. But somewhere deep inside, a part of Tharvex that remembered his own youth, his own desire to learn and grow, wondered what those younglings were doing. Whatever it was, it would change everything. 3 months had passed since the human gave them the knife. Kira and Vosh had transformed their secret storage bay into a proper training kitchen. They had become skilled. Their cuts were clean and precise. Their control over heat was excellent. They could follow the recipe card the human had given them, though they had modified it for their own physiology. "Tonight is the night," Kira said, examining the large pot bubbling in front of her. The smell was intense, making her eyes water even from a distance. "Tonight we show the others what we have learned." Traditional Vacros younglings trained together in combat groups of 20. They ate together, slept in the same dormitory, and competed constantly to prove their worth. Kira and Vosh's group had been together since birth. They will not understand at first, Vosh said, stirring the mixture carefully, but they will feel the results. The recipe the human had given them was for something called kimchi, fermented vegetables with red pepper powder called gochugaru. The instructions were detailed. Wash the vegetables, salt them, mix them with spices, and let them ferment for days. But Kira and Vosh had made changes. They used vegetables from their own homeworld's hunting preserves, tough plants that Vacros ate raw after a kill. They had increased the amount of red pepper by 5 times, and they had added extract from a native Vacros spice plant that was traditionally used to preserve meat on long hunting trips. The result was something new, something that smelled dangerous. Something that made their mouths burn even when they just tasted the liquid. "This is our battle food," Kira declared. "This will make us stronger." They transported the pot to the combat training center hidden in their gear bags. That evening's training session was basic endurance work, followed by a group meal. Perfect timing. Shindra stood before the 20 younglings, her scales gleaming under the training lights. "You have all performed adequately today, some better than others. Tonight's meal is standard protein rations. Eat quickly. Tomorrow we begin advanced claw combat techniques." The younglings sat in their traditional circle, each one receiving their bowl of plain cooked meat and grain. It was functional food, nothing more. Fuel for warriors. Kira and Vosh exchanged glances. Then Kira stood up. "Instructor Shindra," she said formally, "my sister and I have prepared supplemental nutrition for the group. We request permission to share it." The other younglings looked up with interest. Shindra's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "We have been studying efficiency methods," Vosh said, standing beside her sister. "We have created a food preparation that we believe will enhance our training effectiveness." This was not technically against the rules. Younglings were encouraged to show initiative and innovation. Shindra considered for a moment, then gestured permission. "Serve your creation. We shall evaluate its worth." Kira and Vosh brought out the large pot and began serving generous portions into each youngling's bowl. The fermented vegetables glistened red under the lights. The smell made several younglings lean back in surprise. "It smells like chemical warfare," one youngling named Drax muttered. "It smells like victory," Kira said with confidence she did not entirely feel. The 20 younglings looked at their bowls. The red mixture seemed to glow with an inner heat. No one wanted to be the first to try it. Then Shindra stepped forward. "A warrior does not fear food." She took a portion for herself and ate a large spoonful. Her reaction was immediate. Her eyes went wide. Her scales seemed to vibrate. Steam actually appeared to come from her nostrils. For 5 seconds, she stood completely frozen. Then she swallowed. "By the ancient fires," she gasped. "What is in this?" "Fermented hunting preserved vegetables, earth pepper called gochugaru, and preserved spice root," Kira listed quickly. "We followed a technique from—" "Eat," Shindra commanded the younglings. "All of you, now." The younglings obeyed. 20 Vacros juveniles consumed the spicy, fermented creation in desperate gulps, too disciplined to refuse a direct order. The training center erupted in chaos. Younglings coughed and gasped. Some ran for water, but drinking water only spread the burning sensation. Others rolled on the floor. One started breathing small puffs of smoke. Another's scales changed color from dark gray to bright red. Shindra watched with growing alarm. But then something else happened. The younglings began to change. Their eyes became brighter, more focused. Their movements became faster, sharper. One youngling named Korv jumped 3 feet straight up without meaning to, his legs responding with explosive power. "I feel," Drax said slowly, his voice shaking, I feel like I could tear through a hull door with my bare claws. Combat positions, Shindra ordered, her instructor instincts taking over. We test this immediately. What followed was the most impressive training session Shindra had ever witnessed. The younglings moved with speed and precision far beyond their usual capabilities. Their strikes were faster, their reactions were instant. When they sparred, they fought with intensity that belonged to warriors twice their age. Corv, usually the slowest in the group, completed the obstacle course in record time. Drax performed a combat sequence perfectly on his first attempt, something he had been struggling with for weeks. The entire group's performance improved by levels that seemed impossible. Shindra stopped the training after an hour, concerned they might injure themselves. The younglings were still energized, practically vibrating with excess energy. "What was in that food?" Shindra demanded, turning to Kira and Vosh. "We told you, instructor," Vosh said. "Vegetables, earth pepper, spice root." "Earth?" Shindra's voice went quiet. "You used human ingredients?" Kira and Vosh realized their mistake too late. They had been so proud of their success they had forgotten to hide the source. "We learned the technique from watching the human chef," Kira admitted. "Through the window only. He never spoke to us about it." Shindra was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Wait here. All of you. Move nothing. Touch nothing." She left the training center, moving faster than the younglings had ever seen her move. 20 minutes later, the training center doors opened. Shindra entered, followed by Tharvex and 3 other senior warriors. Behind them came a human woman carrying a medical scanner and a human male in an official uniform. "Which younglings prepared the food?" Tharvex asked in a voice like thunder. Kira and Vosh stepped forward. They held their heads high, refusing to show fear even though their hearts were racing. The human woman approached them with her scanner. "I am Jiwan. I am a biochemist. I need to scan you and the others. No one is in trouble. I just need to understand what happened here." She was lying about the trouble part. They could tell, but they submitted to the scans anyway. Jiwan worked quickly, scanning all 20 younglings and taking samples of the fermented food. She typed rapidly on her data pad, her expression growing more intense with each reading. "This is remarkable," she muttered. "The capsaicin concentration is extreme, and combined with the Vacrose spice root compound, it is creating a massive adrenaline response. The younglings' systems are flooded with combat hormones." "Speak plainly, human," Tharvex growled. Jiwan looked up. "The food they ate has temporarily enhanced their physical combat abilities by approximately 300%. The effect will last several hours, then fade without permanent damage." The senior warriors looked at each other. One of them, a scarred veteran named Krellmore, stepped forward to examine the pot of fermented vegetables. "A food that makes warriors stronger," he said slowly. "A food that enhances combat capability." "This is a weapon." "It is not a weapon," the human male said quickly. "I am Tae Min, diplomatic liaison. This is simply food with unexpected biological effects." "Effects that could change battle outcomes," Krellmore said. "Effects that could give advantage in combat. That is the definition of a weapon, human." Tharvex looked at Kira and Vosh. "Where did you learn this technique?" Vosh lifted her chin. "From watching the human chef at the ember table. We observed through the window. We copied his methods. We practiced in secret. He gave us a knife and recipe card, but he never spoke instructions to us directly." "He corrupted you," Tharvex said. "He inspired us," Kira corrected. "We chose to learn. We chose to adapt his techniques for our physiology. This is the Vacrose way. Learn from all encounters. Grow stronger." Shindra spoke up. "The younglings show initiative and innovation. They have created something new, but they used human methods without permission. The fault is complex." Krellmore smiled, showing all his teeth. "There is no fault. There is only opportunity. We must bring this human before the station council. We must claim his knowledge for Vakros warriors. This food weapon could give us advantage over every enemy. No, Taemin said firmly. You cannot claim ownership of cooking techniques. That violates a dozen interspecies treaties. Then we will see what the council says, Krellmore responded. Tharvex pointed at Hyunwoo's restaurant, visible through the training center windows. Lights were still on inside. The human chef was working late, unaware that his simple cooking lessons had just created a galactic incident. Bring him, Tharvex commanded. Bring the human chef. Tomorrow we convene an emergency council, and we will determine if he has committed a crime or created a revolution. Kira and Vosh watched the adults argue and make plans. They had wanted to honor their teacher by mastering his techniques. Instead, they might have gotten him into terrible trouble. What have we done? Vosh whispered. What we had to do, Kira said. Now we must face the consequences, like warriors. The council chamber was the largest room on Kepler 7. The ceilings stretched up 3 stories, and the circular floor could hold representatives from 50 species. Today, it was packed. Hyunwoo stood in the center circle, wearing his chef's coat. He had been awake all night after security came to his restaurant. They had explained the situation. 2 Vakros younglings had learned cooking from him. They had created something that enhanced combat abilities. The Vakros High Command was upset. The station council was confused, and Hyunwoo was potentially in serious trouble. Around him sat representatives from a dozen major species, the Chitauri clicking nervously, the blue Quailans whispering among themselves, the crystalline Shartani reflecting light in agitated patterns, and directly in front of him 7 Vakros warriors, including Tharvex and Krellmore. The council arbiter, a tall insectoid creature named Zel-4, struck the floor with her staff. This emergency session addresses the incident involving human chef Hyunwoo and Vakros juveniles Kira and Vosh. Tharvex, as station security chief, present your statement. Tharvex stood, his massive frame making the platform creak. The human violated our cultural law. He influenced Vakros younglings without permission. He introduced foreign concepts that altered their behavior. He gave them tools and instructions that led to the creation of a combat-enhancing substance. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several species shifted uncomfortably. Furthermore, Tharvex continued, this substance represents a security threat. A food that can enhance warrior capabilities by 300% could destabilize power balances throughout the station and beyond. Hyunwoo wanted to argue, but Taemin, standing beside him as his advocate, touched his arm. Wait, the diplomat whispered. Human Hyunwoo, Zel-4 said. How do you respond to these accusations? Hyunwoo stepped forward. His voice was steady despite his nervousness. I never spoke to the younglings. I never taught them directly. They watched through my window, and I allowed it because they seemed interested. I gave them a knife and a recipe card as a gift, yes. But I never told them to make combat-enhancing food. I shared cooking techniques, not weapons. Techniques that became weapons, Krellmore interrupted, standing up. Whether intentional or not, human, you have created something of military value. And according to galactic salvage law, Vakros has claim to all military discoveries made by our younglings. Jiwon stood up from her seat in the science section. With respect, that law applies to technology and tactical innovations, not biological reactions to food. What happened is simply an extreme case of species-specific dietary response. Explain for the council, Zel-4 commanded. Jiwon activated a holographic display. Charts and molecular diagrams filled the air. Capsaicin, the compound that makes peppers spicy, triggers different reactions in different species. In humans, it causes mild pain receptors to fire, creating a burning sensation. In Vakros physiology, it triggers a massive adrenaline dump, increasing heart rate, muscle response, and pain tolerance. Add the fermentation process and Vakros spice root, and you get a synergistic effect that enhances combat performance temporarily. Temporarily? A Quellan representative asked. The effect lasts 3 to 4 hours, then fades completely. No permanent enhancement, no addiction potential. Just a strong biological response to specific chemical compounds. Krellmore smiled. So it is a temporary combat booster. Even better. Vakros warriors could consume this before battle. We could standardize it, refine it, create tactical advantages in conflicts across the sector. No, Hyunwoo said loudly. The chamber went silent. Everyone stared at the small human chef. No? Krellmore repeated, his voice dangerous. My food is not for war, Hyunwoo said firmly. I cook to bring people together, to share culture, to make people happy. I will not let my recipes be turned into weapons. I refuse. Tharvex stood again. You refuse? You have no authority to refuse. If the Council rules that this discovery belongs to Vakros military, you cannot stop it. Then I will leave Kepler-7, Hyunwoo said. I will take my recipes with me. I will never cook again for any Vakros. You can try to recreate what Kira and Vosh made, but without my techniques, without my knowledge, you will fail. Krellmore laughed. We have the Younglings. They know the recipe. Do we? A new voice called out. Everyone turned. Kira and Vosh stepped forward from the observation section where Younglings had been allowed to watch. They walked to the center circle and stood beside Hyunwoo. We created the fermented food, Kira said clearly, but we do not remember the exact proportions. We experimented many times. We changed amounts. We adjusted temperatures. Without precise measurements, the effect could be too weak or dangerously too strong. It was a lie, Hyunwoo realized. The Younglings remembered everything perfectly, but they were protecting him, protecting his knowledge. You will tell us the correct recipe, Krellmore ordered. No, Vosh said. Hyunwoo is our teacher. In Vakros tradition, a student does not betray their master. If you force this issue, you dishonor our bond. You dishonor us. Shindra stood from her seat among the Vakros section. The Younglings speak truth. The bond between master and student is sacred in our culture. If we violate this, we violate our own laws. Krellmore turned on her. You support the human against your own people? I support tradition, Shindra said calmly. And I see something else. These Younglings have shown more initiative, creativity, and discipline in 3 months of secret training than many warriors show in years. They found a new path to strength. Is that not worthy of respect? Another Vakros warrior stood, then another. Not all of them, but enough. They did not speak, but their stance showed agreement with Shindra. Tharvex watched this carefully. His expression was unreadable. Zelfor struck her staff again. We will hear testimony from the Younglings themselves. Kira, Vosh, explain your actions and motivations. For the next 20 minutes, the Younglings told their story. They described watching Hyunwoo cook. They explained how they saw his discipline and precision as warrior qualities. They detailed their secret training, their failures and successes, their dedication to mastering the techniques. We did not intend to create a weapon, Kira concluded. We intended to honor our teacher by becoming skilled in his art. The combat enhancement was an unexpected result. But a result you should have predicted, Tharvex said. You know your own biology. You know what stimulates Vakros combat responses? We are Younglings, Vosh said simply. We made a mistake, but we also made a discovery. Is that not the purpose of training? To explore, to learn, to sometimes fail? Taemin stepped forward. If I may offer a solution, the problem is not the food or the technique. The problem is control and context. What if we established a cultural exchange program? Vakros who wish to learn cooking could do so voluntarily, with full medical oversight. The knowledge would be shared, not claimed, and the food could not be used in military contexts. Who would enforce this? Krellmore demanded. The Council, Taemin said, with representatives from multiple species observing. If any party violates the agreement, The program ends immediately. You ask Vakros warriors to learn cooking? Krellmore sounded incredulous. To play with food like children? I ask Vakros warriors to expand their definition of strength, Shindra said. Our people have always adapted, always learned from others. Why should this be different? If the younglings are correct, if cooking teaches discipline and precision, then perhaps it has value beyond nutrition. Zelfor looked around the chamber. This is an unprecedented situation. We will vote. Option 1. Declare the food recipe military property of the Vakros, with human Hyunwoo expelled from the station for cultural violation. Option 2. Establish a voluntary cultural exchange program under council oversight, with restrictions on military application. The voting took 10 minutes. Species argued among themselves. Some supported the Vakros claim. Others worried about the precedent of claiming food as weapons. The humans voted as a bloc for the exchange program. Finally, Zelfor announced the results. The council votes in favor of the cultural exchange program. 30 votes for, 12 against, 8 abstentions. The motion passes. Krellmore stood abruptly and left the chamber, several warriors following him. But Tharvex remained seated. He looked at Hyunwoo for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Zelfor continued. Human Hyunwoo, you are permitted to remain on Kepler 7. A formal cultural exchange program will begin within 1 month, with volunteers from any species who wish to participate. Strict guidelines will be established regarding the use of food-based enhancements in combat scenarios. Kira and Vosh, you are recognized as cultural pioneers and may continue your studies under proper supervision. The staff struck the floor. This session is concluded. As the chamber emptied, Hyunwoo felt hands on his shoulders. He turned to see Kira and Vosh, their yellow eyes bright with emotion. Thank you, Kira said quietly, for not betraying us. Thank you, Hyunwoo replied, for standing with me. Tharvex approached, and the younglings quickly stepped back. The security chief looked down at Hyunwoo. You have courage, human, he said. Strange courage. You refused powerful enemies for the sake of principle. That is warrior behavior, even if you do not call it that. I call it being a chef, Hyunwoo said with a small smile. Tharvex's mouth twitched, perhaps the Vakros equivalent of a smile. Perhaps there is more than one kind of warrior in this universe. He turned and left, leaving Hyunwoo standing with his 2 unexpected students and 1 exhausted diplomat. Well, Taemin said, that could have gone worse. Hyunwoo laughed. It was true. He was still here. The younglings were safe, and somehow cooking had become a bridge between species. Now he just had to figure out how to teach an entire class of predator warriors to make kimchi. 3 months after the council verdict, the Ember table had changed completely. The small restaurant had been expanded into a larger space with a proper teaching kitchen. 12 cooking stations lined one wall, each equipped with cutting boards, knives, and heating elements. At the front stood Hyunwoo, wearing his white chef's coat, watching his students work. His students were Vakros warriors. 12 young Vakros, all volunteers, stood at their stations attempting to dice vegetables. Their large claws struggled with the precise movements required. Some crushed their ingredients, others cut pieces that were wildly different sizes. But they were trying, and that mattered. Remember, Hyunwoo called out, walking between the stations. The knife should do the work, not your strength. Let the blade's weight guide your cuts. Gentle pressure, steady rhythm. A warrior named Breck growled in frustration as his carrot rolled off the cutting board for the 3rd time. This is impossible. My claws are not made for this tool. Your claws are not made for energy rifles either, Shindra said from her position in the back of the room. She had volunteered as an assistant instructor, helping bridge the cultural gap. But you learn to use them. Adapt. Breck grumbled but retrieved his carrot and tried again. Kira and Vosh moved through the stations, helping their fellow students. They had become teaching assistants, their 3 months of secret practice giving them expertise the others lacked. Vosh stopped beside a warrior named Thex, who was sawing at an onion with jerky motions. Smooth strokes, Vosh demonstrated, her claws now moving with practiced precision. See? Like water flowing, not like fighting. The cultural exchange program had been controversial at first. Many Vakros warriors refused to participate, seeing cooking as beneath them. Krellmore and his supporters actively discouraged younglings from joining. They called it human contamination and weakness training, but something unexpected happened. The 12 volunteers began showing improvements in their regular combat training. Their claw strikes became more precise. Their movements became more controlled. Their focus during drills intensified. Other warriors noticed. Questions were asked. And slowly, grudgingly, cooking gained a small measure of respect. It helped that Jiwan had published her research about the capsaicin effects on Vakros biology. Her paper, Cross-Species Dietary Responses and Combat Performance Enhancement, became widely read across the station. She had carefully documented the temporary benefits of the spicy fermented food while emphasizing the importance of proper preparation and dosage. The paper made it clear cooking was a science, not just food preparation. It required knowledge, skill, and discipline. Hyunwoo's restaurant also became the most popular establishment on Kepler-7. Beings from dozens of species came to try the food that had caused such controversy. He served everything from mild vegetable dishes to the infamous spicy kimchi that had started it all. Each dish came with careful warnings and species-specific recommendations prepared by Jiwan. The ember table became a symbol of something larger, the idea that strength came in many forms. One evening, after the cooking class had ended and the students had cleaned their stations, Hyunwoo sat with Kira and Vosh in the empty restaurant. They were planning the next week's lessons. "We should teach fermentation next," Kira suggested. "The others are ready for more advanced techniques." "Fermentation takes patience," Hyunwoo said. "You cannot rush it. The food transforms on its own schedule, not yours." "That is the hardest lesson," Vosh admitted. "Vakros warriors are taught to act, to strike, to move. Waiting feels wrong." "Waiting is action," Hyunwoo said. "You are acting by not acting. You are choosing patience over impulse. That takes more strength than people think." The younglings considered this. They had grown in the past months, not just in cooking skill, but in perspective. They were becoming bridges between their warrior culture and the wider galaxy. The door chimed. Hyunwoo looked up to see Tharvex entering. The security chief had become an occasional visitor, though he still refused to take cooking lessons himself. "Hyunwoo," Tharvex said, "we have a situation." The tone made everyone stand. Situations meant trouble. "Krellmore and his followers have been planning something," Tharvex continued. "My sources indicate they intend to raid your restaurant tonight. They want to destroy what they call the Contamination Center. They will not harm anyone, but they will try to wreck your equipment and supplies." Hyunwoo felt his stomach tighten. "When?" "Within the hour. I can post security guards, but that might escalate the confrontation. Krellmore wants a statement, not a war." "Then we give him a statement," Kira said suddenly, "but not the one he expects." Vosh's eyes gleamed. "Sister, are you thinking what I am thinking?" "We defend the restaurant," Kira said, "not with violence, with food." Hyunwoo looked between them. "What are you planning?" The younglings smiled, showing all their teeth. An hour later, Krellmore and 6 supporters approached the ember table. They carried no weapons, true to Tharvex's intelligence. This was meant to be symbolic destruction, not actual combat. But when they reached the entrance, they found it open. Lights blazed inside. At the center of the restaurant stood a long table covered with dishes. Steam rose from dozens of bowls and plates. Hyunwoo stood behind the table, arms crossed. Kira and Vosh flanked him on either side. Behind them stood the 12 cooking students, all wearing chef's aprons over their warrior gear. "Welcome," Hyunwoo called out. "We have been expecting you." Krellmore stopped, suspicious. "What is this?" "A challenge," Kira said. "You claim we have been weakened by learning cooking. You claim this place corrupts warrior spirit. We say you are wrong. We say cooking has made us stronger." "Prove it," Vosh added. "We challenge you to test our creation. If you can consume what we have prepared, we will acknowledge your point. If you cannot, you must acknowledge ours." Krellmore's eyes narrowed. "You challenge us to eat? That is your defense?" "That is our weapon," Hyunwoo said quietly. On the table sat bowls filled with the most intensely spicy food ever created on Kepler-7. The 12 students had worked all afternoon, combining everything they had learned. Korean gochugaru at maximum concentration, Vakros spice root at triple the normal amount, fermentation that had been accelerated and intensified. The resulting creation was dark red, almost black, and the smell alone made eyes water. Krellmore laughed. "You think food will stop us? We are warriors. We fear nothing." "Then eat," Shindra said, stepping forward from the back of the restaurant. She had been watching, waiting. "Prove that you are stronger than these students who have embraced new knowledge." Krellmore could not back down, not in front of his followers, not when challenged by younglings and a human chef. His pride would not allow it. He approached the table, picked up a bowl, and consumed a large spoonful. The effect was immediate and devastating. Krellmore's eyes went so wide they seemed to take up his entire face. His scales vibrated, his claws extended involuntarily. He made a sound like a ship engine failing. His followers rushed forward to help, but Krellmore waved them back. He was choking, gasping, but he swallowed. His pride demanded it. Then his followers, not wanting to appear weaker than their leader, each took bowls and ate. What followed was chaos. 7 adult Vakros warriors, strong and experienced, brought to their knees by fermented vegetables and pepper. They gasped for air. They rolled on the floor. One actually started breathing small puffs of fire. Another's scales changed color 3 times in as many seconds. But not one of them became violent. The food was too overwhelming. It demanded all their attention just to endure it. Hyunwoo, Kira, and Vosh watched calmly. After 10 minutes, they brought out neutralizing drinks that Ji-won had prepared specifically for capsaicin overdose. The warriors drank desperately, gradually recovering. When Krellmore could finally speak again, his voice was hoarse. "What? What was that?" "That was cooking at its highest level," Hyunwoo said. "That was skill, knowledge, precision. And yes, discipline. The same discipline you claim we lack. We could have made it stronger. We could have made it dangerous. But we controlled it, just like you control your weapons in combat." Krellmore stared at him, then at the younglings. Slowly, painfully, he stood. His followers got up as well, all of them looking humbled and slightly terrified. "You made your point, human," Krellmore said. He looked at Kira and Vosh. "And you, younglings, you have grown strong in ways I did not expect." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Perhaps there is something to this after all. Perhaps." It was not an apology, but it was acknowledgement. And for Krellmore, that was significant. After they left, Tharvex emerged from his observation position outside. He walked into the restaurant and looked at the bowls of spicy food still steaming on the table. "That was clever," he said. "You defended without violence. You proved your point without causing real harm. That is a warrior's restraint." "That is a chef's control," Hyunwoo corrected gently. "We know exactly how powerful our tools are. We know when to use them and when to hold back." Tharvex looked at the human for a long moment. Then, surprising everyone, he sat down at a table. "I would like to try one of your dishes," he said. "Something not designed to destroy my digestive system, preferably." Hyunwoo smiled. "I have just the thing." He went to the kitchen and prepared a simple bowl of bibimbap, rice topped with vegetables and a fried egg, with sauce on the side so Tharvex could control the spiciness. When he served it, the security chief ate slowly, carefully. "This is pleasant," Tharvex admitted. "I understand now why beings come here. It is not just nutrition. It is experience." "That is what food should be," Hyunwoo agreed. In the following weeks, the story of Krellmore's defeat spread throughout Kepler-7. It became legend, told and retold with increasing exaggeration. The human chef who weaponized vegetables. The younglings who mastered a human art and used it to defend their teacher. The warriors brought down by fermented cabbage. More Vacros volunteered for cooking classes. Not many, but enough. The cultural exchange program expanded to include other species. A Chitauri merchant asked to learn baking. A Quellan scientist wanted to understand the chemistry of flavor. Even a shy methane breather requested lessons in food preparation for their specific atmospheric needs. 6 months after the council verdict, Kira and Vosh opened their own small restaurant on the far side of the station. They called it the Warrior's Table, and served Vacros human fusion cuisine that was already getting recognition throughout the sector. Hyunwoo attended the opening night, bringing a gift. A matched set of professional chef's knives, their handles carved with both Korean and Vacros symbols. "For the masters who were once students," he said, presenting them formally. Kira and Vosh accepted the knives with reverence. In their culture, the gift of weapons was sacred. These knives were weapons, just not the kind most Vacros understood. "We will honor these," Kira promised. "We will use them well," Vosh added. At the council's annual meeting 1 year after the incident, Zelfor presented a formal commendation to Hyunwoo. The Galactic Coalition recognized him as a bridge builder, someone who had fostered genuine understanding between species. "You came to Kepler-7 to cook," Zelfor said during the ceremony. "But you did more than that. You showed us that strength comes in many forms. That knowledge shared becomes wisdom. That even the fiercest predators can find common ground over a shared meal." Hyunwoo accepted the medal, a small metal disc that felt heavy with meaning. That evening, he sat in his restaurant after closing, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, his home, his family, his grandmother's small kitchen where it all began. He thought about her often. She had taught him that cooking was love made visible. She had shown him that food could bring people together, could heal wounds, could build bridges. She had been right. Tharvex entered through the front door, not bothering to knock. He had become a regular visitor, though he still struggled with chopsticks and refused to admit he enjoyed the food. "I brought someone," Tharvex said. Behind him came a smaller Vacros, barely more than a child. "My daughter," Tharvex explained. "She wants to learn cooking. I told her you are the best teacher on the station." Hyunwoo looked at the young Vacros, at her bright, curious eyes, at the way she held herself with cautious excitement. He smiled. "Come in. Let me show you how to hold a knife." As he began to teach, as the youngster struggled and learned and grew, Hyunwoo understood something profound. He had come to space looking for adventure, looking to share his passion, looking to make a difference. He had succeeded beyond his wildest dreams, not by changing the universe, but by changing one mind at a time, one meal at a time, one careful cut of a vegetable at a time. Humanity's greatest weapon, it turned out, was not technology or strength or even intelligence. It was the simple act of sharing what brought them joy and inviting others to share it too. And somewhere on Earth, In a small kitchen that no longer existed except in memory, Hyun-woo's grandmother would have been very proud.